All right. So hello, my name is Cory Anderson. I'm with Eide Bailly, and I'm the president of the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. Welcome to our meeting today. So the first thing we'll talk about is our agenda, and this is it right here. So we've already passed that first part, breakfast and networking. We're now into the welcome and general business section. And so I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to hear from our meeting sponsor, Bhoomi. After that, we're going to hear from Chris McCarthy from Eide Bailly about our modules, bundles, and SuiteApps, and he'll go through a little more detail about what he's going to talk about there. Then we'll do a short break, 10 minutes after that, and then I'll be back up and I'll talk about some of the key highlights from 2019.2. And then we'll hear from Margie Cominos, also a board member, and she's going to do a tip and trick for you today. And then after that, we'll have our open forum and some networking opportunities. The open forum is a time when you can ask any question that you want. You can talk to other people. Hopefully, as a group, we can help solve some problems or maybe point you at least in the right direction of how to solve some problems. So I'll go ahead and move on here, if it'll let me. Okay. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Coda Coffee. Is that pop? No, okay. Coda Coffee has been providing coffee for us for most of this year and will hopefully continue to doing so. So thank you for the delicious coffee, Coda Coffee. Talk about our membership. Our membership currently we have 957 members. And those are individuals from various companies, consulting firms, end users. We also have membership from people outside of the Denver metro area and outside of Colorado. Since we do offer remote viewing, I know that there are people from across the country that also tune into our meetings. So those are all members as well. Membership is free for our user group. You can register at rmnsug.org. When you register, the advantage is that you get notification of upcoming meetings and events. You have the ability to attend our meetings remotely through GoToMeeting. You get LinkedIn forum access. Our LinkedIn forum is a private group that we try not to let it get spammy so that people can post questions and get answers and not have to read through a whole bunch of sales material and things like that. As a member, you also have access to a $400 discount to SuiteWorld if you plan on going. And also, you don't have to be a member for this, but we have CPE credits available for most of our meetings now. We do have to get approval to offer those credits based on the content of the meeting. So that's why I say when available. Hopefully, we'll be able to get approval for most of our meetings and keep offering those CPE credits. Today's meeting, you'll have the option or the ability to get 2 CPE credits. So also part of our membership is our LinkedIn user group forum. The purpose of that forum is to support fellow members with questions and answers, follow up on maybe some questions or answers that we can't get to from the open forum today. We also use this for our announcements. We post when our presentations are available. Some notes, the discount to SuiteWorld, whenever anything is available, that's where we're going to post it. That's how we try and communicate with everybody when we don't send emails out. And it also gives everybody here the ability to post job openings, or if you are looking for a new job in the NetSuite space, you can post on there as well. A couple of reminders. Evaluations for today's meeting will be emailed to you to complete. Those will be emailed a little bit later today. Walk-in attendees, please make sure that you register an RSVP with I think it's an iPad at the front table there. That way we know that you were here, and then we can send you a meeting evaluation, and then you're registered to receive notifications in the future. Also, please register for events using the same email address as your membership record so that you don't end up with 2 memberships. The user group uses a production NetSuite account to manage the user group, and so if you have multiple customer records, when we send email blasts, you might get multiple emails. So just try and use the same email that you normally use when you registered for membership. So I would like to announce that the user group is 11 years old today. Not today, this month I should say. November 2008 is when the user group was started. And so to celebrate, we have cupcakes today. So please make sure you get a cupcake. The ratio is 3 chocolate to 1 vanilla because most people like chocolate due to my research. So please have a cupcake. So I just like to recognize the user group's board of directors. We are all volunteers to the user group. And so first of all, this is me, Cory. I've been on the board for 5 years now. I started out as just a member coming, and then I joined the board after a while, and then I've been the president for almost 2 years now. Also, I'd like to recognize Margie Cominos. She is from PlantScan. She is our sponsorship and membership chair. Where is Margie? Margie, can you stand, please? So Margie's in the back. So you'll notice that Margie has been on the board for 11 years, and the group is 11 years old. So Margie is one of the founding members of the user group, and she has been here all along. So I'd like to give Margie a round of applause, please. Also, Mike Kackline from Vertifor, he's our communications chair. He has been on the board for 1.83 years. His anniversary is in February for being on the board. He is not here today, unfortunately. He had some go live meetings that he had to, well, not NetSuite go live, but some deployments that he had to manage today, so he couldn't be here. But I'd like to say thank you to Mike, even though you're not here. And then also Casey Johnson. She is from SuiteSolutions. She is our treasurer, and she has been on the board for 3 months. So Casey, raise your hand. She's over behind the breakfast table over there. So let's give Casey a round of applause too, please. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and we will move on. So CPE credits, what are CPE credits? Well, if you're not a CPA, you may not know what CPE credits are. So CPE stands for Continuing Professional Education. It is a standard that is in use by people who are either training to become certified public accountants for the first time, as well as for those who are already hold a CPA license and are renewing that certification after a specified period of time. So CPAs are required to earn a specific number of CPE credits, either annually or biannually. I don't know how that works totally because I'm not a CPA. But this is a valuable, I believe this is a valuable addition to our user group. We had, just for your reference, 22 people sign up to say they wanted CPE credits today, which means there are 22 CPAs among us right now. And so that's what a CPE credit is. So CPE credits for this meeting, first of all, you need to get a keyword tracker from the front table. Write down the 2 keywords that are given during this meeting today. One will be at the beginning and one will be at the end. On the keyword tracker form, there is a link. You go to the link on the form and fill out the survey. Requests for the credits need to be received within 7 business days. The credits will be issued within 14 days after the meeting, in theory. And you must be present at the meetings to earn the CPE credits. We don't offer them for remote viewing. If you experience problems when you go to the survey link, please clear your browser cache, refresh your screen, and then try again. If you still have issues after that, you can email info@rmnsug.org and we'll help you with the CPE credits. And the CPE credits are sponsored by Eide Bailly. And so those emails will come through to me, and then we have a training support person that can help figure out what's going on. But if you've already entered for CPE credits before, that survey link sometimes says, oh, you can't do this because you've already done it, and that's why you need to clear your browser cache. So if you have problems to clear your cache, try it out and then give us a call, or I'm sorry, an email if you can't figure it out. So here's our first CPE keyword today. The keyword number 1 is pillow. So write that down on your tracker form. So I'd like to ask if anybody here, is this your first meeting that you've been to? A couple, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, about 10 or so people, so welcome everybody. I'd like to take a minute for anybody that has an announcement, such as a job opening, or if you're searching for a new NetSuite role. now is the time when you can say so, and I'll try and repeat it so that people viewing remotely can hear as well. Anybody? Yes, sir.
We're looking for a NetSuite consultant.
Okay, NetSuite consultant. Which company are you with?
Promatis Corp.
Promatis Corp. Okay, Promatis Corp. Looking for a NetSuite consultant. And if you haven't already, you can post that that need on our LinkedIn forum. That way, people that aren't at the meeting today can also see that. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm a purchasing manager, materials manager looking for a job. Was a finalist for a couple of them, but didn't get them, so sort of back to square zero.
Okay, purchasing manager looking for some work. So, and again, you can also post on our LinkedIn forum that you are looking for that, and that's a good way to get out to everybody. Yes, sir. Okay, billing platform looking for NetSuite system integrators. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move on then. Thank you for those announcements. So tips and tricks. If you have tips and tricks of your own, you could submit a tip or trick through the contact form at our website, rmnsug.org. We try and find the tips and tricks that are not common knowledge, that we think everybody might get some value from. These are kind of the aha moments, a problem that you solved or something you couldn't quite figure out that took some time. We want to share that information with the group. And also, if you do submit a tip and trick through the Contact Us form, let us know if you personally would be interested in presenting it at a future meeting, because we are always looking for other people to present as well. So I'd like to talk for a minute about our meeting sponsorship. Membership to the user group is free. The cost of our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have SuiteApp and breakfast sponsors. SuiteApp sponsors must be available through SuiteApp.com, and our breakfast sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have NetSuite certified NetSuite consultants on staff. The reason we have 2 different levels of sponsorship is to provide the user group with a variety of options for companies that they can potentially work with to help them with their NetSuite implementation. So right now, and I'll talk about our sponsors here in a minute. So our SuiteApp sponsors, it's a very popular sponsorship. We are booked through November 2021. We have sponsorships available starting then. And then our breakfast sponsors are also, it's a very popular spot, and we are booking into January 2021 for that spot as well. If you are interested in sponsoring a user group meeting, you can go to rmnsug.org/sponsorship. The upcoming meetings that we have, in January 2020, we will be presenting on Suite Analytics, and that is going to be Jeremy King from SuiteSolutions is graciously offered to present that day, so that should be very exciting. In March 2020, we're going to have our 2020.1 update release notes, and then we're also going to do revenue recognition, also known as RevRec. It's a pretty big deal. The companies that do use it, I think, could get a lot of great information from this meeting, and maybe your company might have a use for RevRec and you don't know it yet. So hopefully we'll be able to give you a lot more details about it in that meeting. In May 2020, we're going to go through workflow, and also known as Suite Flows, and then we're also going to have a Suite World update, because Suite World will have happened at that point. Hopefully we'll get some good updates from NetSuite there. And then in July 2020, back to basics, our NetSuite 101. This is designed for people that are brand new to NetSuite, but I think that even people that have been using NetSuite for a while get value from this meeting, because there may be things that come up that you just didn't know existed, because they're not in your normal everyday world of NetSuite. So that's always a pretty popular meeting. And then in September 2020, we'll have our 2020.2 updates, and then fields, records, centers, lists, and tabs, and basically how to customize all of that and make it work for your specific business needs. So I'd like to take a minute to say thank you to our sponsors today. Our SuiteApps sponsor is Bhoomi, who we'll hear from in a couple of minutes here. And then our breakfast sponsor today is SuiteSolutions. So if you haven't had a chance to talk to either of them yet, we'll have a break later on, and then you'll also be able to talk to them more about what they do later on in the open forum and networking section of our meeting. Both of our sponsors today have a giveaway, and so you can go and drop your business card in the buckets on each of their respective tables, and then we'll do a drawing for that giveaway towards the end of the meeting this morning. So at this point, I would like to introduce Chris Gottschalk from Bhoomi. She's going to come up and give you a 10-minute presentation.
Morning, everybody.
Let me go ahead and switch you to presenter. Do you want the microphone here?
I can speak pretty loudly,
Okay.
I think.
This is picking up for people remotely, so that's
Perfect.
you don't have to do anything there. So if you don't want to, then
And we want
so
to
I
go
need to.
share screen.
Is it available to you?
I don't see it
Okay.
coming on.
Yeah, let me make presenter. Okay, this computer's going to stay here.
All right. Great. I think it's a go. So I want to thank the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group for having Bhoomi this morning. We're really happy to be here. We do a lot of work with NetSuite, and so I know it's a long wait to get on the roster. So thanks again for having us. My name is Chris Gottschalk, and I'm an account executive with the Bhoomi organization, and I'm based in Denver. But I cover Bhoomi's customers and prospective ones in the Four Corners region of the US. So that includes Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. And my focus is on the commercial sector of Bhoomi's businesses, which are for organizations up to $1 billion in annual revenue. I'm also here with my colleague, Merle Gish. He's one of our alliance directors and leaders for Bhoomi. So he's in the back, and feel free to ask us any questions during the break or after the session today if you have curiosities about Bhoomi. And we can answer any questions for you.
Would you mind using the mic?
Sure.
It's a little quiet in there. I'm just going to turn this on real quick. You can stop right into there. Thank you.
I wanted to ask the audience, how many of you are familiar with Bhoomi? All right. How many of you deploy Bhoomi at your organizations or have deployed Bhoomi for a customer? Okay, great. So we've got a lot of people that are going to be new to Bhoomi today. So the Bhoomi organization is an independent software organization owned by Dell. Bhoomi is actually headquartered out of Chesterbrook, Pennsylvania. A lot of people are familiar with Dell being headquartered outside of Austin, Texas. But Bhoomi operates independently and is the fastest part of Dell's overall product portfolio right now. So Bhoomi has about 9,000 customers around the globe. We're onboarding and signing 5 new customers per day. And a substantial part of the customers that we work with, particularly in the commercial sector, are engaged with NetSuite deployments. They're either evaluating NetSuite, they just deployed NetSuite, and are looking for an integration strategy to connect NetSuite to their application ecosystem, or they have been deployed with NetSuite for quite some time and are looking to up their integration game. So I'll go into a couple of specifics about Bhoomi to give you a better idea of what we do, but organizations often think of Bhoomi as modern middleware, and specifically we refer to Bhoomi as an integration platform as a service, okay? So about 20% of our current user base uses NetSuite. So it's a substantial part of our business as well as our partner network. Bhoomi was SuiteCloud's Partner of the Year in 2018, and we just came back from Bhoomi World in October, and NetSuite was our Partner of the Year, and we do consider NetSuite to be our most strategic partner in our partner ecosystem in terms of technology alliance vendors at this time. We share a lot of different customers in common. Bhoomi as well as NetSuite cover all verticals. Some of the common customer stories that are out there that you'll hear about at SuiteWorld would be GoPro, who adopted Bhoomi back in 2013 in order to accelerate their entry into big box market stores. They were using tools that weren't enabling them to onboard new partners fast enough, so they adopted Bhoomi's integration tools as well as our capabilities around EDI. To begin translating specs from distributors and orders and the big box companies directly into NetSuite. Another example would be Corksicle, which has a presence at Suite Connect, pretty prominent one every year. They develop like thermal mugs and thermal coolers. They're an organization that since 2016 has grown over 300%, so over 100% year after year. They were doing a lot of hand coding for integrations and using some older technology to try to manage their NetSuite and e-commerce application ecosystem. They weren't able to scale fast enough to meet the needs of distributors and consumers, so they adopted Bhoomi to expedite that process. Currently, I'm working with different kinds of customers that are evaluating Bhoomi. I'm working with a customer that's been using NetSuite for a long time, that's moving away from hand coding in order to meet the compliance needs of their customers to onboard them into NetSuite faster. They're a finance organization. I work with another organization that a partner brought to us that we just signed about a week ago, which is involved in online corporate training. They're just in the process of adopting NetSuite. They signed with that partner recently, and they're going to be connecting NetSuite and Bhoomi through Bhoomi to other applications like Magento and Salesforce, and the list kind of goes on, including their own LMS platform. And there are quite a few different types of organizations that use both products. Retail's prominent. Bhoomi also offers specific accelerators around e-commerce platforms that are used widely with NetSuite, like Shopify, for example. So we're on board right now with a lot of the Suite Connect methodology around specific e-commerce platforms to really accelerate a lot of the integration development, specifically for customers that are working in e-com and using NetSuite. So just a little bit about Bhoomi. I'd mentioned before that we're generally thought of as a modern middleware platform, and we refer to ourselves as an integration platform as a service. So Bhoomi is a single instant multi-tenant cloud-based platform, true cloud-based platform, similar to NetSuite. And Bhoomi is set up essentially to be able to allow organizations to connect any kind of application, regardless of what it is or where it resides. So in addition to cloud-based applications, Bhoomi also connects legacy on-premise-based applications, information and devices. Bhoomi's largely application agnostic, which is why a lot of organizations are adopting Bhoomi so rapidly. Traditional middleware technologies don't play well with cloud technologies, whereas a tool like Bhoomi does. In addition to that, they usually require a lot of heavy coding and a lot of heavy maintenance, whereas Bhoomi's cloud-based. So organizations are able to leverage the nimbleness of the cloud and utilize Bhoomi to point Bhoomi to various applications within their ecosystem, develop mapping logic, and orchestrate the way that data moves between applications of the ecosystem in a factory automation fashion. Just a little more about Bhoomi. So we're known in particular for our integration capabilities. There are a few other things that we do to augment the data layer for organizations. So we also offer data quality and data governance. So we've got organizations, for example, that may have data in multiple places, customer data, for example, and a lot of that data is in conflict. It's not consistent, it's not standardized. So a lot of those organizations would use Bhoomi's master data hub in order to govern data, manage data quality standards, and oftentimes they're putting that single trusted golden record of a profile, a customer, supplier, product directly into NetSuite and standardizing that data across from multiple applications. We also offer workflow and business process management, so that enables organizations to automate processes, people, and approval between applications. We also do a lot of B2B or EDI, so document management from third-party organizations, very popular in manufacturing and distributing. We do a lot of that in concert with NetSuite. And then we also offer more sophisticated API governance capabilities around security, API gateway, API portals. So, I'd mentioned before that Bhoomi and NetSuite, for us, NetSuite is our most strategic partnership. I indicated that about 20% of our current user base, which is growing by 5 customers a day, is at some stage of evaluating, deploying, or using NetSuite. The reasons is that NetSuite is considered the best of breed integration platform as a service, with the capabilities to handle both cloud and on-premise applications equally well. So our alignment and partnership with NetSuite has grown pretty substantially. I think the partnership in terms of a 20% user base right now is probably going to go to about 25% of NetSuite customers utilizing Bhoomi in the next 2 to 3 years. And Bhoomi is noted for its efficiency. Bhoomi is a low to no code platform, which is largely configure versus code, enabling organizations to point at applications with their ecosystem, cultivate mapping logic. We actually have close to 1 million mappings that are developed by our user community for NetSuite alone to a whole host of applications that organizations and users can leverage in order to expedite their integration approach. We're also considered to offer the highest value because of the level of capability that we offer and our ability to manage complexity, but also doing it much more quickly. So organizations that are looking to expedite onboarding from partners and distributors, for example, to expedite quote to cash with e-commerce systems are utilizing Bhoomi to get set up in days and weeks as opposed to months or even years in a lot of cases. Bhoomi is also built for a lot of flexibility and scalability, so we can manage simple point-to-point use cases, but also what we found is that a lot of ecosystems who are adopting NetSuite or organizations, as they grow, they need to manage more complexity, they need to manage more mappings, they need to do more with that data, and they need to do it a lot faster in real time. And so those organizations that are using NetSuite and whose businesses are growing are very likely to be looking at Bhoomi to accommodate scale for them. Also, if you look at Bhoomi from the analyst perspective, you're always going to find Bhoomi for integration platforms for both cloud and on-prem capabilities to integrate at the top right-hand corner of the Gartner floor and Ovum reports. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, that even though we're independent software ISV, we're also owned by Dell, so we've got the backing of a large organization behind us that helps support the customer base and has continued to help fuel a lot of the development that we're doing around NetSuite, with NetSuite, and for NetSuite customers.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Give us just a minute to switch out here, and we'll have our main presenter come on up. Okay, Chris. Okay, so we have today Chris McCarthy from Eide Bailly. He is a solutions engineer, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his experience with NetSuite and what he's done, and then take it from there. So hit the present button there. Share screen. All right.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Thank you.
We minimize that.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. No one needs to see that. Okay.
Oh, that's not you. That's me.
Oh,
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cory. So, hi everyone. It's great to be here. So, like Cory was saying, I'm a solution engineer with Eide Bailly, and so prior to Eide Bailly, I actually worked at NetSuite in a couple of different roles. So, I was actually an implementation consultant for their wholesale distribution and manufacturing verticals for the first couple of years that I was there, and then I moved on to the pre-sale side where I was a solution principal, really responsible for scoping new customers that were evaluating NetSuite, making sure that within the implementation plan, there was, everything was accounted for, all the modules they needed. And if, it was something like a phased approach, we developed a project plan in accordance to that to fit budget, timeline, all those kinds of things. And then all that kind of brought me over to Eide Bailly, where I do a little bit of everything there from the pre-sales perspective in terms of doing the proof of concept demonstrations to the discoveries to the statements of work and contract execution, all that fun stuff. So that's just a little bit about my background. And I'm based here locally in Denver. I live right next to Wash Park, so it's really nice for me and my dog to be able to just kind of walk out there and hang out in the park every now and then. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be going over the differences between modules, bundles, and SuiteSolutions. So the thing with NetSuite, and I'm sure you've all realized this. Oh, there we go. That NetSuite is a really wide and deep application, right? There's a lot that comes with it inherently day one, and so you don't know what you don't know, right? So hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to differentiate and kind of delineate the differences between a module, a bundle, Suite app, and those sorts of things. And of course, if there are any questions, I'm always happy to help answer those as we go along. Okay, so to first start out with, we're going to talk about what your base NetSuite solution includes, right? So this is day one, you open it up, you can see that, you're going to have your core financials in there, AR, AP, GL, all that good stuff, your marketing, automation, CRM, and then some light inventory management even. So those are the base pieces, base functionalities that you'll see with NetSuite without any sort of add-on modules or anything like that. And some of you may not be using NetSuite CRM or marketing, but it's just part of the application, right? It's something you can turn on, turn off, just depending on your business. And some of you might be using Salesforce or MailChimp, something like that for the marketing side. But those are the basic components that you can see and just turn on at any given time. And then underneath that, what we have are the core components of these products, right? So what actually makes up your inventory management, what's making up your financials, what's making up your CRM, and all the functionality that's encompassed within those areas of the application, right? So you're going to have different modules that give you certain sets of functionality, and then bundles. There might be third-party bundles. They might be bundles based on sets of configurations from another account that you've downloaded or installed into yours. And then SuiteSolutions, we'll dive into those a little bit as well here. But this, really what we're going to focus on here is these four areas here. So your modules, your bundles, your Suite apps, and your SuiteSolutions. So to start, we're going to start with modules here. So modules are probably the biggest component of your annual costs, right? The licensing that's inclusive of your estimates that you get from NetSuite, right? So you might have things like advanced financials, you might have things like advanced inventory or inventory management cloud service. They recently changed that name with the Oracle acquisition to make it sound a little bit better, I guess, but it's a little bit much for me to say off the tongue. But then we have, things like project management. I mean, there's a ton of different modules out there, and just depending on your business requirements, what you need, those modules are really available for you to almost purchase and implement in an a la carte fashion, right? You can purchase advanced financials, fixed asset management, project management. You can purchase all those in one-off fashions as your business scales and grows, and you need more functionality to encompass all those, new and unique requirements that you might have. And then from that, we're really going to take a look into the financial management cloud service module. So that's the module we're going to be touching on, walking through some allocations, some amortization templates, and then, if there's any questions along the way, feel free to stop me. But again, these, the bottom line with modules is that they will always have an impact on your licensing costs. So really make sure you do homework before you go out and purchase modules. you might see, on paper, it might seem to fit your requirements, but make sure, you have someone demonstrate it for you or just have someone look into it for you a little bit. So there's a lot of areas where you can do that. You can do that, with Suite Answers, Help Center, all those resources within NetSuite have really specific and really detailed actually explanations of each module. So make sure you just do a little bit of homework before you go out and purchase any of those modules that you think you might need. Okay, so the thing we're going to get into now is the module demonstration for NetSuite Financial Management Cloud Service. So go ahead and get out of that. Okay, now I am logged in here as the administrator here, Catherine Glass. And so what I've actually set it up is actually to be a reminder for allocation schedules. So what allocation schedules allow you to do is actually take expenses, or you can even take revenue from different accounts and split that or spread that into different accounts. You can code it, to different departments, classes, locations. If you use custom segments, I don't know if anyone here uses custom segments, but you can use that allocation engine there as well. And then it just allows you to, take the expense, the balance in that account after the fact. So as you're accruing different expenses, maybe for different bills and things like that, and it's hitting those accounts, you can then take it and then spread it to, locations, classes, like I was mentioning here. So what I'm going to do first is actually going to pull up our list of allocation schedules. So there's fundamentally two kinds of allocation schedules here. So we have a fixed allocation schedule and a dynamic allocation schedule. And so I'll go ahead and jump into our departmental rent allocation. And so this is actually going to be a dynamic allocation. We can see that here, that we've got this dynamic allocation field grouping drop down. So whenever you select the allocation mode of dynamic allocation, you're going to see this here.
Chris, can you zoom in a little bit? Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's super small. Sorry about that. There we go. Can everyone see a little bit better there? Okay, good. Sorry about that. Like I was saying, with the setup of these allocation schedules or these templates, you can then, define things like the frequency, when you want these to run, how long you want them to run for, if you have a subsequent date in mind. And what's really nice with these allocation schedules, you can actually layer them in a waterfall fashion to then expense out based on the timing that you want, maybe at the end of the month, to move money throughout the GL without having to go in and create all those journal entries manually. You can have these schedules run in that fashion for you. So if we scroll down here, a couple other things just to note specifically about dynamic allocation. So what we're really doing is taking the balance of a statistical account, and based on that balance, we're going to spread that across, like I was mentioning, the different segments that we have. So if it's departments, classes, locations, or in this scenario, we're actually doing it by a unit type. So we're doing it by area. You can do it by headcount, which is very popular to spread costs across different locations by their headcount. So,
Question.
Yes.
Is that limited to statistical accounts, or could you use a revenue or a series of revenue accounts?
Yes, yeah. I mean, the source accounts that you use here, I mean, you can use a revenue account as that source, and you can have those destination accounts also be those revenues. Absolutely. Okay, and right here, we're just having it auto-populate based on the balance that we have within this specific statistical account. And so what NetSuite is doing, there's actually a safe search in the background that's running to say, okay, count up the square footage per location, and then give that back to me, right? So for an example, if you're going to do headcount, a lot of times customers will actually integrate their payroll. And so by integrating their payroll, they always have the most up-to-date headcount of who's actually an employee of the firm. And so those dynamic allocation schedules are always a lot more accurate just because everything's integrated. It's all real-time information here. So from here, we can create this journal entry right from the allocation schedule, or we could have done that from our dashboard, but since we're already here, let's go ahead and just create this journal entry. And now we can see we got our journal entry created, and then based on the balances within those statistical accounts, we're spreading that expense across these different departments, right? And it's bringing in that memo of allocation. And we can see here from that rent expense, we're going to spread it across those different specific department segments here. And then we can have the option to approve it or not if you want these to automatically post, because they are, already essentially set within, just setting up the templates themselves. You can have them automatically post, but I just have it set up to have some sort of approval in here. Okay, so let's go ahead, come back to the allocation schedule here and take a look at our list again. And so that was an example of a dynamic allocation, right? So the other example that we would have is a fixed allocation. So let's take a look here. I believe it's this one, yeah, right here. So what we're looking at here is for these professional fees within this specific account, we're going to then code a weight to each specific, in this case, clinic or location. I have renamed these segments for demonstration here, but essentially what this is just assigning a weight to a specific location, and that's a fixed number, right? And those values are percentages. So based on these percentages, this allocation schedule is going to run, and based on whatever balance is in this account, it's going to take into account these weights, and that's the amount that's going to be produced on the journal entry once you ultimately run that schedule and get everything up into NetSuite. So that was at a really high level, the allocation schedules piece. Are there any questions about what I just walked through, or can we move into the next piece here?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you have any other use cases other than like a rent? Like, how have you seen these companies using allocation schedules?
Yeah, I mean, it's really for any kind of expense. I mean, a lot of times you're going to see it with marketing expenses. You're going to see it with some of these kind of prepaid expenses even. I mean, there's a lot of different use cases for these allocations on the expense side, and then you can also allocate revenue, like you were asking here as well. So it's not limited to just expense accounts. So there's a lot of different use cases that different customers can find and are really creative actually with allocation schedules.
Yes. You have some best practices around statistical accounts, getting information in there, managing the information that's in there, making sure that that's what you expect it to be before you run the allocation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question for the remote?
Yeah, sure. Oh, wow, it's much louder. Okay. So the question was about best practices around setting up these allocations and making sure that the data that these allocations are being ran off of are, solid, good data.
Statistical accounts.
Sorry, for statistical accounts specifically. So in the example I just went through, that would be using the area statistical account, or it could be head count. So I would say to make sure that you're setting these up correctly is to just have a couple of test allocations, right? Because when you go through and do those allocation schedules, what you're going to find is that you can just simply go back and delete the journal entry, but you want to make sure that it's calculating everything correctly. So it's kind of twofold here. So let me start with the setup of those allocation schedules. So making sure that when you set up these specific schedules, right, you're defining all the frequencies, the number remaining, all the nooks and crannies, so to speak. You're making sure you account for all those, and then just making sure that the data you're pulling it from, right, is sufficient and valid data. So if you're pulling this data from things like headcount, that's fairly straightforward to then build a safe search off of, right? Because you're just counting the number of employees per department and grouping those together. And then from that, that's what's driving that allocation. If you're using something a little bit more difficult like square footage or area, then in that case, you would, again, just want to make sure you're going through the testing and setting all that up appropriately, because you might have some different use cases or nuances to where it's a little bit different on the setup side for that. And then there's a lot of documentation on some of the other, implications or gotchas that there might be with setting up allocation schedules, and that's all on SuiteAnswers. It's very, very well documented and very thorough. And even getting into YouTube is even a really good resource. I tell people that all the time, and they don't really believe me, but it's actually a phenomenal place to see a lot of NetSuite product demonstrations and things like that. Yes.
What about the scheduling of the allocation schedules?
Mm-hmm.
To automate the running of those?
Right. Yeah.
For
So.
example?
So what I did here in this example is I set it up to, be a reminder. So you want these, because you typically want them, to have a second set of eyes before they actually post and start pulling money in from one account, putting them to others. So really what you would be doing is setting up the frequencies in accordance to how you want it. And so what you would see here is the allocation schedules do. You would have almost a list here of those allocation schedules with the ability to enter the journal entries here.
Yeah, I just didn't see any dates or frequency numbers on what you showed us. That's why I was asking, like, how do you?
Yep, so the next date here, and then the frequency.
Period. Okay.
And you can define a lot of different kinds of frequencies, end of period, and all that kind of stuff. But the next date and your subsequent dates are really going to be what is going to drive.
But you're saying you're using those fields to create your own manual reminder versus having the system automatically schedule. Is it able to automatically schedule?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that reminder is just something that's actually native to the module itself. So it comes with the reminders for allocation schedules, amortizations, things like that. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Can you run it across multiple subsidiaries?
Yes, absolutely. So that was an example of an intra-company allocation, but absolutely, you can do it with intercompany allocations, and it'll actually create all the elimination entries for you and everything as well. Great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into the next piece of the financial management cloud service module. And so that's going to be amortization templates. So this is really to help set up and handle prepaids. If you've got a lot of prepaids that you're dealing with and you want some automation and creation of those journal entries, this is a really useful tool for that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that reminder here. So very similar to the allocations, you can set this up for reminders. I think a lot of you probably are aware you can set up reminders for just about anything within NetSuite. And so what we're looking at here is our specific posting period for this period. And then we can see we actually have two journal entries that need to be created. It looks like we didn't create one for October or November. And we can see the schedule this is associated with and the template name. So templates are what are going to be used to set up all the different parameters through which the amortization schedule is going to run. So I will pull that up here as well. And so the amortization schedule here, this is what you're actually going to associate with a bill. So you're going to choose the template here. So what we have here is our amortization template, which is really sitting on the back end, defining what accounts we're hitting, how long this is going for. We have some ability to set offsets. So if we want to push out the creation of some of those journal entries a couple of periods, that's what we can use these specific fields for. And then you define our term source, transaction date, or due date. And then there's a lot of different methods through which you can use that amortization engine here. So coming back here and looking at our amortization template, what we can see is that actually from the template itself, you can see how much has been amortized up until this point, how much is remaining still to be amortized, and then the status of these templates. So this is, a lot of different fields that you can use to create, really nice saved searches to understand where you are with certain prepaids and set those up for reminders, or just have that kind of, just right there on your dashboard, easily accessible to see some of this information. So you don't have to kind of go through like I've done and click through a lot of different screens to get there. You can bring that to you on the dashboard here with all these different fields. But as we scroll down here, what you can see also is the different journal entries associated to this specific template here. So all the journal entries that are being created, and I, again, have this set up to be a reminder before it's going to go ahead and post these journal entries. And then, so if we come back here, what we're going to see is for October and November, we don't have anything in there yet. So let's actually go ahead and create those journal entries and approve that journal. Okay, and so that's actually going to take that and group them together into one single journal entry. So most times you're not going to have, multiple periods open or things like that where you have to go back and do these sort of things. That's just for the case of this specific demonstration here. But we can see we've got, based on our template, our appropriate accounts set up, being driven, again, by all that information that we saw in the setup there. So if we come back to our amortization schedule here and refresh that page really quickly, scroll down, we'll see that now we have both of these specific journal entries associated to this schedule now. And so if, if this was an October period that we wanted to hit, we could actually just ran it for just October and just had it in October and then come back and post it in November. But just to make it a little bit easier, we just went ahead and created both of them there. Okay, and now what I also want to show you is where you get this from. So obviously there's a lot of traceability that you all know with NetSuite. Just because everything's under the same umbrella, you're always going to get links back to where this came from, right? So looking at the bill here, we can see exactly how this was set up. So what we're seeing here is we've got a prepaid insurance for a specific amount. And so when we're entering this bill, we're actually selecting the schedule here. So from that list of drop downs, however many schedules that you would have, you just simply select that. It's going to pull in the start and end date, and then any information as it relates to actually processing that's going to happen from that schedule itself. Okay. Any questions around amortization templates, schedules, setting those up and running those? Yes?
So if there's an error with one of the journal entries, you have to go in and delete it, say, since you just made October and November, if October was wrong, you delete the journal entry for that. When you create a new one, will it automatically read it as October again, or will it jump to December?
So in that scenario, you could just go back to the journal entry itself, the one, yeah, and just edit that and have that repost. It's probably the easiest way to go about it. Okay, nothing else? All right. Okay, so let's come back to our dashboard here. And then there's also a couple other bits of functionality that come with the advanced financial module that I'm not showing today. So one is the ability to have multiple budgets. So how many people in here are using NetSuite's budgeting tool? Okay, a couple of us, not too many. So one of the things that the multiple budgets tool allows you to do is save multiple versions of the budget, right? So if you've got an annual budget that you have for all your different departments, and then you want to reforecast that throughout the year, maybe on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, you can actually use the multiple budgets to be able to have multiple versions of it, so you can actually start comparing how you're doing as far as budgeting goes for the year and seeing how far or close you are as the year progresses. And then there's also billing schedules. That's a part or a component. So it lets you set up either standard or interval billing schedules and lets you define the frequency for which you bill customers. If that's, something that you have, 50% up front and then you bill them monthly for the remainder of that balance, that's something you can set up using a billing schedule. So those are a couple of other components that actually come with the advanced financials module that I'm not showing today, but also very useful pieces of functionality. Okay. All right, so the next, let's go ahead and pull our presentation back up here, and we were at bundles. Okay, let's go ahead and move all the way back. Sorry, we've got a lot of animation going here. All right, bundles. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about Suite Bundlers. So what this essentially allows NetSuite customers, partners, and obviously NetSuite themselves to do is take sets of configurations or customizations and bundle them together and then share them, either publicly to the NetSuite ecosystem or to just specific accounts. So with Suite Bundle, there are two fundamental types of bundles. So the first one, or both of them, being configurations and customizations. So just two different sets of bundles that have two different pieces of functionality encompassed within them, but fundamentally they make up everything encompassed within Suite Bundler. And so a lot of times also what you're going to hear, and we touched on a little bit earlier with SuiteApps. So with SuiteApps and bundles, a lot of times you're going to hear them used interchangeably. And that's because oftentimes they are the same thing. So a Suite app and a bundle are fundamentally the same thing. That's, you know, a big takeaway, I think, from this piece around bundles, just so you don't get a little bit confused there. So first thing about bundles. So bundles can be managed. And so what managed means is that when you sign up to install a bundle from a managed bundle, the publisher of that bundle is going to be able to push updates into your NetSuite account automatically. And so you're basically saying, that's okay, I'm all right with that. So when you go and install bundles, and I'll go through that in the demonstration a little bit, when you install those bundles, it's really important that you understand who the publisher is, how many installs has it had, you know, just some metrics around what bundle am I actually going to install. Take a look at the components of the bundle. Make sure everything that you're going to be installing isn't going to affect the day-to-day operations within your NetSuite account. And just make sure, again, you're doing a little bit of homework as far as what you're downloading into your account. And then they have levels of availability. So I mentioned you can have a public bundle that's shared across the NetSuite environments, and anyone can take it and download it and use it. Then there's also a concept of shared. So if you ever use any kind of third-party applications that have a Suite app or a bundle, then they would actually provision that to your account ID, and then at that point it would be able to be installed. And then private is really only allowing administrators the right to be able to install that in a specific account. So 3 levels of availability for any given bundle or Suite app. And then third, bundles, they can be made, like I said, by customers, partners, and obviously NetSuite. But you're going to see a lot of bundles with those different third parties. And a nice thing about these bundles too is that NetSuite releases a lot of free bundles. So does anyone in here use file, drag and drop, or sticky notes? Okay, got a couple in here. Very good. So those are always bundles that I try to show, just because it's free functionality, right? And it really does help with some day-to-day tasks, especially getting to the file manager with drag and drop, and then also on the sticky note side is a really nice little collaboration tool. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and jump in to demonstrate the Suite Bundler. Okay, and I'm going to jump from a couple of different roles here. I have a few different environments that have these things set up here, so excuse me as that loads, and I will zoom in here a little bit. Can everyone see that all right in the back? Okay, perfect. So first thing I'm going to do is show you just a little bit, for those of you in the room that haven't seen sticky notes or file drag and drop, what you can do with that. So I'll pull up a customer, Smith Supplies here, and just show you a little bit around what you can do from this perspective here. So what you'll notice is when you install and configure drag and drop or sticky notes, you're going to have some differences in the record. So you'll have the ability to drop files here and then add some different sticky notes as well. And let me zoom out just a little bit there. And I apologize, some of these demonstration accounts are a little bit clunky. They're not as quick or as fast or just as good as your production customer live accounts. So now what I'll do is just show you really quickly how you can take something like a new invoice and just simply drag that and drop it right into the customer record. And you can drag and drop up to 5 different files. And like I said, you're seeing that that demo account here really take its time to get one file in there. But all your different files will be a lot quicker just by virtue of having real live accounts. Okay, and then with sticky notes, what this allows you to do is create and essentially tag people across, different transactions, different record types. So, on a customer record here, if we want to say to, I think I'm Kathy here, I can say select who I want to tag in this specific sticky note here, as many people as I want, and say follow up with latest invoice. Okay, something like that. Okay, and then we can save that. And we can make this be public, or we can make this be something that only a couple of people can view just based on how we want these things to go. So now when we pull up this customer record, you're going to see this sticky note as soon as you come in. So literally getting rid of the paper sticky notes, right, that you can throw away and use, or misplace, excuse me. With these, you can just have them in the system, mark it as done, cross them out, say yes. Okay, and that's crossed out. You can reply to these sticky notes saying, you know, I did, and no response. Probably not what you want to hear about an invoice, but it'll layer those sticky notes on top so you can see a little bit of a conversational history between employees for any given transaction, record type. And when you set these up, and I'll walk through this in a second, you can select any record type or transaction that you want. It's really just about where you want these specific tools to be set up for. Okay, and then it's a very easy process just to delete that, like that. Okay. Very straightforward to get that in there and set up. So how do you go about getting these bundles installed in your account? So with the right role, right permission, you can actually go in and search and install bundles by going over to customization, Suite Bundler, and then search and install bundles. So let's go ahead and pull up our file drag and drop. Let's put in a couple of keywords here. So we can see here file drag and drop, the bundle ID, the version that it's on, whether or not it's managed, the company name, and then the number of installs. So these are the things that I said to look out for when you're installing bundles, because there are a lot of free bundles out there, but you might not necessarily love some of the free ones that some of the other customers develop, because maybe it's specific to them and they might have things like scripts or custom records in there that you just don't want impacting your environment. So make sure you definitely take a look at those kinds of pieces of information for every bundle. So what you'll be able to do is come into the bundle details, and you'll see this install button here for any public bundles. So that means anyone can go in and install those bundles immediately. And then if you need to update them, because this is managed, NetSuite's going to push out the updates to me. If it wasn't a managed bundle, you could actually do those updates yourself. So, and then there's just some other information around the components. So this will have exactly what makes up this specific bundle and what comes in with it. So we can see the different records, different files, and different scripts that are coming along with this specific bundle. So again, be very aware and cognizant of what you're installing before you go ahead and install it. But with something like file drag and drop, sticky notes, it's really easy to uninstall it, and it really won't impact your environment at all, really. And if this is a Suite app, so if this is a partner developed solution, this is where you would see some of that Suite app info here. So for example, if we want to come back here and say, I believe our friends over at Bhoomi have a couple of, I should probably learn how to spell, have a couple of bundles as well. And again, you can see the company name, the versions, number of installs. And then if we click into there, we're going to see some information about the publisher related to the Suite app itself. Okay. But then once we go in, we install it, we verify everything looks good, we need to set up and configure the bundles, right? So next thing we want to do is come over to setup, customization, and this is where you're going to find both of these setup types. So for file drag and drop and sticky notes. Let's start with sticky notes here. It's a little bit easier. It's only one screen. So this is where you're going to set a lot of different preferences for how you want these sticky notes to display to different users. If you want tutorials to display for the first time they're seeing it. And then some things around admin setup. And then the record types here, you can actually push this sticky note functionality to all of the record types within NetSuite, or you can just enable it on specific record types. And I recommend doing it to specific record types, not all of them, because you're not going to have, a lot of need for collaborations with specific record types, and you don't want it to delay the loading of a record because it's got sticky notes running in the background that don't need to be there, right? So just a couple things to be aware of in terms of the record types to expose it to. And then access, you can enable this for all roles or just make it role specific so only certain roles can actually use or see these sticky notes when they're set up on different record types. Then we'll have an email capture address as well. I just designated that as mine as far as capturing the replies to some of those sticky notes. So if you have kind of a group email that you're using for someone's collaboration, you can have that be that email capture for those sticky notes. And then you can even include images on those sticky notes. So there's a lot of different things you can actually do with sticky notes, and I always like to make sure to bring that up because it's a really neat, very easily installed and configured bundle here. Okay, and then for the file drag and drop setup, pretty similar in terms of just kind of going through the motions and setting it up. NetSuite made it really easy, I think, in terms of setting this up. So what you're going to do is designate a global destination folder for all these different attachments that you'll have. So I just designated attachments received, but you can actually have different folders per record type. So as we get into this, I'll show you that a little bit here.
Chris, there's a question on
Yes.
the GoToMeeting.
Okay.
She said that they installed the file drag and drop, but it basically created a whole separate file cabinet of sorts. And is there a way, like this, that's not like the desired result. Is there any way around that? Can you use the normal file cabinet structure, or is it always going to be in its own separate?
Yeah, I mean, so in my scenario, what I'm showing here, it is using the native NetSuite file cabinet. And so this folder that we're also using is, right within that cabinet here. So if I pull this up and show you the attachments received, we're going to see that new invoice that we put in on that customer record is already in the file cabinet here. So it's just about what folder you designate. So maybe go through the setup and make sure you have the correct folders set up. And then if that's still a problem, that could be something to maybe reach out to support about, because that sounds a little bit odd. Okay, so here's where we're going to designate the different record types that we're going to have this functionality designated for. So what we're seeing here, we've got it for pretty much everything on the customer or sales side. So from sales orders, quotes, invoices, etc. And then on the vendor side, so vendor bills, vendor records, etc. Now, if we just wanted to add a new one, it's very easy to just come in, designate a record type, and then say, let's say we want to do purchase orders. Designate a global or a folder name for this specifically. So if you want to have vendor bills, customer invoices, all those different types to just kind of make it a little bit more organized, simply just about the setup within the file drag and drop itself. Okay, and then you have the ability to actually establish folder patterns as well. So as they're input, or as files are dragged into NetSuite, it'll follow a pattern that you designate to what file it go, or what folder it actually goes to. So this is, everything looks good here, and so we can actually save and copy this. So if we're going through and we're setting up a lot of records at once, it's just a nice time saver to just say save and copy. If we're going to do, all of our AR related drag and drop files at once, you can go invoice, customer, sales order, all of that just by saving and copying, just so you don't have to put that folder name in there as well. Okay, now we'll just simply save that. Now we've got our record type, and now let's go to the next step here. So now we're going to see and confirm everything that we're going to expose the drag and drop bundle to, and then if everything looks good, we can go ahead and finish. Okay, so now when I pull up a purchase order, I should be able to see that specific functionality right there. And I might need to log in, log out just to make sure it takes that change, but let's go ahead and take a look, see if we have it already. Fingers crossed here. Yep, and right there. So again, really easy to go in. You can remove record types that you don't want to expose this to just by going through that same setup process. So if you want to add and remove record types for either of these bundles, it's really easy and really straightforward to just go in and do that as needed. But typically, especially with something like drag and drop, you don't need to do it that much. You know what record types you want to have this functionality for. Yes.
Can you go into more detail on the file destinations in terms of, say, getting down to a different form, different custom forms for each transaction type, and having one form go to one destination, another form go to another destination?
Right. So it's going to be based on the record type itself, not the form that you're using. So if you have a lot of different custom forms, it's still going to use fundamentally the same, whether you're using a folder pattern or just the destination folder you use, it's going to be driven by the record type, not the form itself. I'm sure, though, you could script that on the back end if you needed to. Yes?
Can't you use a variable in the destination folder path so that you could base it on custom form?
That would be part of the pattern itself. I'm not sure. I have not set it up to use a pattern or anything like that, but that's not something that I have to use based on any kind of other field to drive that. That's a good use case for it. Absolutely. Okay. Pretty straightforward in terms of setting up and installing bundles there. Any questions around bundles themselves, setting them up, configuring them, anything like that? Yes?
I have a question actually going back to the sticky notes. Is there a search you can do on sticky notes to get like all sticky notes that are currently available in the environment, or is there a way, can you pull up sticky notes on reports at all?
I'm not sure actually. I've never had that question to actually go through and see if we can do that. Let's take a look, because that's actually kind of interesting. See if we have some sticky notes here. So yeah, we can take a look at all these different types. So then you can, based on what you want to look for, I guess, you can pick the specific search that you want to do and set that up. Yes?
I guess since I've never seen sticky notes before, how are they different than tasks?
Than tasks? It's just more of, sorry?
How are they different from tasks or user notes?
Yeah, so it's more of a collaboration tool than user notes or tasks would be. I mean, you can set up tasks or user notes to be reminders so that you can go back and look at those things. But if you need something like, follow up on this really quickly and just, have someone look at it, because those sticky notes can also push emails out. So you can have, people just have a little bit quicker of reaction times. And it's like the first thing you see, right? With user notes, it's kind of hidden down there under the communications tab, under the subtab of a subtab, right? So when you use sticky notes, it's right there as soon as you log into the page. And especially if you're tagging specific people, then you know who needs to see this and who needs to take action on it.
And does that would that populate on their employees' homepage or something? Do they see that, or do they have to go to the record to see the sticky note?
Right, so they would go to the record for that, but again, that would be a good use case to have a saved search there to use as a reminder and flag that, anytime someone's referencing me on any of these sticky notes, make sure to pull that in there and show me what the note is and give me the transaction. Yes?
This is a little bit beyond what we just talked about here, but what are you using to learn how to write sticky numbers? Really easy to do. You work in a sandbox environment, you're doing all your testing, and you've done a lot of safe searches and custom fields. You can write a sticky number in your sandbox environment and then just install that in your production. So you're not sitting there looking back and forth and trying to recreate it. So to take that even a step further, it's a really great tool to use to go from sandbox to production.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Can you kind of repeat what she just said for the people online, please?
Yeah, sure. So what she was saying is that Suite Bundler is a really useful tool for moving from sandbox into production. So she was saying that if you have any sort of safe searches where you created a lot of custom fields, maybe they're calculated fields even, and you want to bundle those sets of configurations together, and you've tested it, you've vetted it out, make sure it looks good in Sandbox before pushing it to production, that's an easy way to just take it and move it into your production environment without having to recreate everything that you've done in your Sandbox environment.
Can you show real quick just the basic functionality of that? Like just where you would go to.
Oh, just setting up a bundle?
Something?
Yeah.
Or the safe search, make a bundle out of a safe search.
Yep, so I mean, going through the bundle here, what we'd be just doing, so if any of you are familiar with like the CSV import tool, which I'm sure a lot of you are, then this bundle builder is a very similar kind of assistant to help build these bundles out. And so this is where you're going to define if this is a configuration bundle and if there's any kind of the installation script that you're going to use. But you're just going to basically move through what are the properties of the bundle, any of the objects and specific, fields, forms, those kinds of configurations that you would include within this bundle, and then just moving through and setting up those bundles. So it's fairly straightforward in terms of just moving through all these different screens here and getting to a bundle that you can then share to different environments. I've even seen scenarios where there's a customer that has a lot of different entities running NetSuite and they've divested themselves of one of them. And so for one of them, they took and bundled all the configurations and a lot of the data even into a bundle and moved it into a separate NetSuite account and installed it there. So all the configurations, all the saved searches, reports that they had were already moved in there because they were able to bundle it, share it to that new environment, and then start, a lot sooner than having to go back and recreate all that information. Okay. Yes, great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. All right, so I believe that kind of wraps it up for Suite Bundler, unless there are any questions as far as maybe going in and installing them is concerned. Okay, the next thing I did want to touch on really quickly on the same page of bundlers, or Suite Bundler, excuse me, was the concept of SuiteApps, right? So I mentioned they're fundamentally the same thing, but it's just about who's publishing them really. So let's just go ahead and take a look at SuiteApp.com. So does anyone in here use any kind of Suite app from a third party, whether it's Bhoomi or if it's for expense management? Okay. All right, very nice. So here it's very similar to like an app store, but this is where you can take a look and see with specific bundles, what kind of bundles they are. So you can have an integrated Suite app, you can have a hybrid Suite app, or a native Suite app. So a native Suite app would be everything is built and configured really within NetSuite, right? It might just be a lot of sets of custom records with a lot of saved searches and different report writers. And then, maybe even a couple of scripts, if you're using Suite scripts, you can have those included within a native Suite app as well. And then you'll have a concept of hybrid Suite apps. So maybe there's a couple of configurations that they made, some different tabs, some different records, and then it also integrates into an outside application. So you see it a lot with expense management, field services, banking integrations. There's a lot of different use cases for those kinds of integrations and integrated Suite app solutions. So just another thing to mention here. So this is also a really good place if you're looking for some way to extend NetSuite functionality. Native NetSuite's not getting it done for you. This is a good place to come to figure out exactly, what's out there in the marketplace and start to evaluate different vendors for different pieces of functionality. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and jump back here and talk a little bit about SuiteSolutions now. Excuse me as I drill through all of these. Okay, SuiteSolutions. So does anyone use SuiteSolutions today? Maybe shared vendor bills. Okay, what SuiteSolution is it? AR chargebacks and okay, very nice. That's one of the more advanced actually SuiteSolutions out there. So essentially, for those of you that don't know what SuiteSolutions are, so SuiteSolutions they're similar to bundles in that you're able to install them in a very similar fashion, and they actually just came out and made them free. So about 2 years ago, I think it was, SuiteSolutions were actually a part of the estimate, right? There was a list price associated to them. So for something like shared vendor bills, which is a pretty popular one, it was about $8,000. And now it's free, and it's really just about a couple hours to set it up. And with some of the SuiteSolutions, you can do that relatively easily and do it yourself, because there's a lot of documentation out there. And all the resources as far as SuiteAnswers, Help Center, as far as setting that up and different best practices and implications of setting things up one way or another. But it's really detailed in terms of what they're able to provide. So it really just accelerates some functionality that you might need to have. So shared vendor bills allows you to take a bill and split it out amongst different locations, different subsidiaries, intercompany. So I'll actually be going through a shared vendor bill process with you and showing you an intercompany shared vendor bill and how it creates the eliminations and all that fun stuff on the back end. But something else to just note as far as how you get them. So if you just submit a UTS ticket, you can get them provisioned into your account. So there's a big long list, and I'm sure Cory's going to send this deck out after. It's got a link in the notes of one of the slides that'll take you to that page. But if you just Google SuiteSolutions, it'll be like one of the first or second hits that you get on Google, and you'll be able to see the list and then all the white papers or all the data sheets that you see right here as far as what each one does and what it allows you to do. Okay, and then here's some overarching examples. So I mentioned the shared vendor bills piece. It's also advanced approvals. So really good way to set up and configure really robust approval processes without building a custom workflow. Advanced approvals really gives you a good starting point for building those workflows out. And then it's really just about configuring the rules around the approval process itself. Effective date pricing, if your pricing is if it's really variable based on, your vendors, or it's based on, specific, customer demands, consumer demands, product, then you're able to kind of control that using this suite solution as well, as far as how long this price is effective for, and then give yourself, just start dates and end dates for different item pricing strategies. And then loss traceability, really more geared towards any product-based companies or manufacturing-based companies that might have lot-numbered inventory, whether that's a raw material, part of a finished good, or anything like that. It just allows you to forward trace and backward trace those lots. So based on, the raw material, and then getting up to the finished good level, and then seeing, okay, what fulfillments was this a part of? What work orders was this a part of? Purchase orders? It just brings everything in kind of a 360-degree view, so that if there's any recalls or something like that as it relates to those lots, you'll be able to see who you bought it from and who you sold it to. Okay, those just a couple examples of the suite solutions. And now this is actually very new, so this is probably only a few months ago. So there are 9 suite solutions that are actually owned by NetSuite at this point. So these are some of the more advanced suite solutions, I would say. So CSV Integrator, Suite Adapter, those are 2 ways that you can get data into NetSuite. But they're owned by NetSuite Technical Services. So if you start reading into these suite solutions and you figure one of them might be a good use case for your business, then NetSuite Direct is who you want to reach out to understand some information around how to get those set up. And they're treated as customization, so really it's just about some hours to get these things set up. There's no licensing component to it. It's just about services to get you set up with these specific suite solutions themselves. Okay, and now I'll go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so auto-assigned UPCs is no longer supported. They won't provision that anymore.
Oh, they don't even provision it? Okay.
So since they came out with this free, they've started kind of also deprecating some of them.
Some of them are unsupported, correct. Yeah, so I would think, again, just kind of go through and vet out whether or not these are still supported suite solutions, because that's, good point. Thanks for mentioning that there. So make sure that they're obviously supported. So things like shared vendor bills, those are going to be, continually supported. But again, there's a lot of third parties that actually develop different kinds of functionality for these suite solutions. So, they might start deprecating some of them, but with that, a lot of different partners and ISVs are going to be creating their own.
Yeah. The other really important thing is, like, a lot of the code is written in, like, 1.0, and it's older code, right? Like, so lot traceability doesn't work that well as it could be if it was rewritten in, like, current version code. So it has a lot of performance things. That's another thing to kind of be aware of. And that's NetSuite's way of saying, hey, we gave you this functionality for free. We're not going to update this type of code. So another kind of tidbit to be aware of.
Yeah. A lot of traceability, especially very, it's pretty slow. And then really it's just a bunch of safe searches grouped together and put into a record there. But Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, was there a question right there?
Well, I just want to mention, like, vendor prepayments is a state solution. However, with 2019-22, they actually did build in a vendor prepayment option. So a little bit different, much simpler to use than the suite solution, which requires a lot of, not really customization, but configuration.
Right, right.
So, some of the things I think with the vendor solution is reading those into the product itself.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So you want to be sure to check release notes, figure out, what's going to be, native to the system. So vendor prepayments is a great example of something that NetSuite took, and they said, you know what, it's better as just core functionality. There's just a lot more benefit to having it as part of the core product than something extra that we have to get provisioned and then set up, configure, etc. Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and jump into the demonstration for the shared vendor bills. Okay, so I believe it is this account. Let's take a look. So I'm going to pull up a bill. Oh, perfect. Okay, and this is a bill I already processed just for the sake of time, make sure that we kind of hit all the points as far as the bill distribution is concerned. So when we scroll down here, what we're seeing is that we have some expenses for advertising that we then want to share to different, in this case, subsidiaries. So this is going to be an intercompany shared vendor bill allocation here. So if we come over to the bill distribution details and take a look here, we're going to see a couple of things. So one, the allocation journal that gets created after the record gets saved, and you associate this specific shared vendor bill distribution template to this bill. So if we come over here and look at the bill distribution schedule, we'll see we have our advertising split schedule there, and I'll pull that up there. And then we have these three different distribution details. These are actually going to be related to the specific entities that I've set up on the shared vendor build template here. So if we come over here, what we're going to see, it's an intercompany allocation, obviously, and then here's where you're going to set up the intercompany accounts per each subsidiary. Now, if this was an intra-company allocation, it's a lot more straightforward to set this up. You're not going to have to go through and set up each individual, segment or location that you want to spread this out to. This is really just speaking to intercompany allocations. And if we come back here and then pull up our journal entry based on what we define here in our distribution line. So I'll just pull up the detail within this specific template here. So what we're going to see is the allocation weight that we've designated and all the specific destination accounts or source accounts that we would need to set up in order to run these, the shared vendor bill split for us. So if we come back here, look at our journal entry based on the weights that I designated for all three of those subsidiaries, is going to come in and actually post to those specific entities specifically. And you're going to see that there's a couple of elimination entries that it creates for you as well. So NetSuite's going to go in and automate the creation of all the elimination entries, the due tos, due froms, just by virtue of setting up the shared vendor bill allocation templates. So, once you get it set up and it's sort of straightforward for you to understand how the configuration works, it's kind of rinse and repeat to set up different shared vendor bill allocation templates and have those run in the background. You can see we have some intercompany customers in there. Those are what's marking the elimination entries that we're using for this specific vendor bill split. Okay, so it's just a nice piece of functionality that can just really accelerate putting in a lot of those journal entries for you. So similar to the allocation schedules, but this is vendor bill specific. So if you get one bill that's pretty hefty that you want to split out amongst a couple of different entities, things like that, you can do that straight from the bill using this suite solution here. Okay. Any questions as far as the shared vendor bill piece is concerned? No? Okay. All right, and then there's a couple of other SuiteSolutions I've got set up in here. I would need to switch to a separate account here. So let me just go in and I'll show you something simple like lot traceability, since we were already talking about it. So we'll come down here and look at lot traceability. And here, so does anyone use lot tracking within NetSuite today? You've got one? Okay. Do you use lot traceability at all? No? Okay. Well, maybe this could be something that you look to use. So we'll designate the subsidiary if we're going to forward trace or backward trace the specific lot, and then designate our location, our item, pick our disk tissue here, and then we'll select a specific lot number. Let's get a couple more dates in here. Okay, and then we will submit. Now this is going to take in and, oh, sorry, can everyone still see? Okay, perfect. So if we come over here, look at some other transactions, we can see a work order completion with this specific lot number. On the procurement side of things, we can see a purchase order and an item receipt associated to this lot number and the quantity associated to it. So you can automatically pull up those specific transaction types if you want and drill a little bit deeper into them. And if there are any fulfillments, you'd be able to see those here as well as far as what customers it went to. You can see that right here. So you'd be able to take those, all this information, export it into Excel, and then reach out to whoever you need to as far as those lots are concerned. So the nice thing about lot traceability too, there's literally no setup really involved. Just because you're using lot numbers already, I mean, it'll just basically take all the transactions using lot numbers and pull them into this this screen here for you. So you literally just install it, and there's no really config setup. You can set some preferences, but it's very, very straightforward. 20 minutes and you're in and out. Yes?
Unrelated, but can you pick up the wire, the microphone wire? It keeps hitting the chair and.
Oh, I am sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a lot louder. Move this up here. Okay. All right. So that takes us through our SuiteSolutions piece there. So let's go ahead and jump back into the presentation. Thank you for bearing with me as I scroll through this PowerPoint deck for the 4th time. Okay. All right, just some takeaways, some overall takeaways here. So modules, you can buy them a la carte fashion, they're licensed, and they're always going to have an impact on your costs. So make sure, again, you do your homework before you go out and start buying any modules or look to buy any modules. Just make sure you know exactly what's included with them, where any of the shortcomings are, and any of the gaps that you might have in terms of your business process and what these modules actually do, so that you just, are aware that that's going to either, you're going to need to build some customization around it, or you're just going to need to modify your business process a little bit. Bundles, they're great, but look closely. Make sure you're not installing any bundles from any random customers out there. People can publish bundles to any NetSuite environment they want. As long as you install them, just make sure you're being aware and cognizant of all that. And then SuiteSolutions, they're free now. So go out and start looking at some of the SuiteSolutions that are offered and seeing if any of them could maybe help you out a little bit. And then if any of them seem a little bit more daunting in terms of setup, configuration, look to SuiteAnswers or the Help Center, or you can look to a partner to help set those up and configure it for you. And then always use the free resources before you install or implement anything. So I mentioned, obviously SuiteAnswers, the Help Center. Does anyone have the LCS Pass in here? LCS Pass, so the Learning Cloud Support Pass. So what's really nice about it is it gives you access to all the modules within NetSuite, and you can actually take and learn all those different modules. So if you have someone that's really kind of the NetSuite admin or your NetSuite guru, you can have them take any courses as far as any modules are concerned. And those are the same courses that NetSuite consultants would take to get certified. So those are all the same trainings that I took to get certified when I was in delivery, and they'd be the same ones that are available to all the customers as well that have that pass. So if you don't have it, recommend looking into it just a little bit, because you can get one pass and kind of spread the password to everyone. They don't like me telling you that, but you can absolutely do it. I always recommend you do it, just because it's nice to have people be a little bit more power users and comfortable within the system. And what's the harm, right? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the modules piece,
Mm-hmm.
could you go into the account and show us like where you would see what?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I am sorry, I forgot to do that.
High-level review of some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Cory's referring to here, so does everyone know where to go to in their NetSuite account to see what modules, what bundles, everything they've installed? A couple here. Okay, so what we'll do here in this case, so again, you just need to make sure you have the right role, right permission to be able to come in and look at this information. But what you'll do is go to Setup, Company, and we'll scroll all the way down here to View Billing Information. So here's where you're going to see your billable components. So you're going to see your user counts, how many users you currently have in the system, full access users, and how many licenses you're currently utilizing. Same goes for employee-centered users. So I don't know if anyone here uses the employee-centered functionality, but this is also where you're going to see that as well. So you're going to see your full access users here. I've got 10. I've only got 2 set up here. And then, all the different information as far as different user types that you might have. So the employee center user, we have 5, and I'm not using any of those currently within this account. So, also something just to note, every account has 5 free employee center users. So if you haven't used it and you're kind of curious what it does, you can actually set it up, set up yourself as an employee center user, and you can use it to put in time, put in expenses, put in purchase requests. And so if you're not using it or you haven't purchased any, you actually have 5 in there that you can go ahead and assign yourself. But this is where you'll see all the billable components, what's going to be on your estimate, on your invoices as well. So the add-on modules, these are what's going to make up that whole licensing cost. So we can see we have a lot within this specific account here, very manufacturing oriented. So all of our inventory and procurement kind of functionality you would expect, demand planning, getting to light manufacturing, standard manufacturing, etc. So this is where you're going to see all the enabled modules here. So if something should be enabled and it's not, this is where you can look to and go back to NetSuite and say, hey, where's this module? Something like that. Hopefully they didn't miss something like that. That'd be a pretty big miss on provisioning's part.
Is there a customer-facing document about all these modules and like what they do and like anything that NetSuite publishes that you're aware of?
I know there's some white papers out there, but as far as specific module feature functionality, I don't think there's really anything out there as far as, it does this, doesn't do this. Definitely not going to tell you that. So with that, it's just kind of going out into the partner network or to NetSuite, just understanding what these specific modules do. And then from there, you can kind of evaluate whether it's something that you need or not. But there are, I would use a lot of the resources that I've mentioned, SuiteAnswers specifically, just because there's a lot of functionality there. And then I'm going to harp on this again, but YouTube is so good. There is so much out there. We've at Eide Bailly have a bunch of videos out there. So for example, the dynamic allocations we walk through, I've got a video up there that walks through, more in the detail side of things and setting up and configuring it. So again, it's a really good place to find really niche pieces of NetSuite and how other people are handling it and how it's supposed to work within the system. Then what we have for add-on bundles, so if we had any other bundles installed here, so we've got fixed assets management, quality management, and different bundles that might need to be installed as it relates to setting up this specific account. So a lot of times with implementations, you're going to have some implementation-specific bundles even for configurations and for data migration. You'll have all the templates and things like that. But this being a demo account, you're not going to have that. And then you've got some information around the provisioning history and component usage here as well. So this is where you would find anything related to what you actually are using in your NetSuite account, what you're not using, what's provisioned, what's not. And this is, kind of your one-stop shop area to view everything that should be within your system. Thank you for mentioning that, Cory. I totally forgot about that. Okay. All right. And I believe that about wraps it up. Cory, did we want to jump into anything else? I know we got about 8 minutes left here.
Yeah, I mean, any other questions for Chris? On anything at all?
On the sticky notes,
Mm-hmm.
does that save the information in the note anywhere on the record, or is it when the sticky notes deleted, it's just gone?
So once it's deleted, you're not gonna have that note anymore. Yeah.
It doesn't copy it into the.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah, it can copy it into the user notes. I'm sorry.
Right, so
I
it does
apologize.
save
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the file drag and drop, if you select in the preferences the global destination folder, I can't like unselect it, and so now every single record type is essentially going to like one folder that I selected there. Is there any way to work around that, or do I need to set up for all the record types?
Mm-hmm.
Every single like destination?
Yeah, I would. If you want specific record types, I would say go to the setup of the specific type within file drag and drop.
Can you repeat the question for?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. So his question, he's having a problem with the folder that drag and drop is using. So what it's doing is using the global destination folder for all the different record types, but he wants to split them out. So what you can do there is just go to each individual record type and designate what folder you want to put that into.
But is there a way, like, instead of, I mean, there's a bunch of different stuff that nobody would really need to drag and drop for us, and I mean, without setting something up for those forms too, is there a way to get rid of that global designation? Because it won't let me select just like a blank. I'm basically having to create a folder for that. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it would kind of go into this, I put like a general folder for that.
Okay.
All of, if there wasn't a record type set up for that, it would all just go into there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for each individual record type that you've got set up, they're all going to the same folder, right? That's the issue you're having.
I would have to. I mean, I just did this, and
okay.
I think somebody had already set that global destination. Somebody had already tried to do that or whatever. But without having to set up every single record type for our company, say like that's the location. If I don't want forms or people to have the ability to do that, is there a way to get rid of that global search, like where it's preferred?
Yeah, the global folder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to have you, it's going to make you designate a mandatory folder or a global folder. And if you want to switch it, it's odd you're not able to switch it.
I'm able to switch it. I didn't know if there was a way to like undo that and then only have the record types I set up be the ones that are able to use the drag and drop.
Deploy the script.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. I think there's a couple ways to do that there. All right, thank you for that. Yeah.
One other one. You actually see it in one of your demo accounts. It's called Navigational Portrait. It's a really powerful, we use it. Free, bundle, whatever. Actually, it was Rick Cobb. Where are you? You're the one that shared it with us. Yeah. So Rick actually is the one who told us about it. It used to be that you had to pay for it, then you made it free. It's very powerful. You actually, one of your home screens on the dashboard showed it. You can sort of subsets of information.
Right at the top.
Yep, there we go. Right here. Yep. Yep. This is a great place. And there's a lot of different types of navigation shortcuts here as well. This is specific to this manufacturing environment, so you're going to see production information here. But you can have anything from payables, receivables. It's really nice in terms of.
It's a way of having shortcuts and being able to put them basically in folders. Instead of in this huge list.
Right, exactly. You don't want to have the shortcuts go through the screen. You can just have this here to go to different places in the system, absolutely. Okay, well, that's all I had for you today.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
So we're going to take a 13-minute break and then come back at 10:30, and we'll start on the 2019.2 updates.
Oh, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Bring that back on. Okay, unmuted. All right, so at this point, we're going to go through our NetSuite 2019.2 update highlights. So I just want to qualify this a little bit. I'm kind of presenting some of these updates that NetSuite has published in the 2019.2 release, but I don't know all of the details of all of these updates. So if you have questions about the specific updates, we might talk about it during the open forum and see if anybody has started using any of the new features or functionality yet, and then kind of go from there. If you read the release notes, this is a extremely long document. I read most of it. I stopped when I got to all of the suite scripting and stuff like that. But there's just a ton of information and new things that NetSuite is putting out. And they do it all the time, but there's just a lot of things. So the board members and I we just brainstormed a little bit to try and come up with some of the things that we thought were some of the coolest highlights. That's not to say that this isn't fully inclusive of all the really awesome things that they've done. So I'm going to go ahead and dig in here. First thing is enhancements to dashboards. So NetSuite is like made little tweaks here and there to the dashboards. One of the cool things now is that an analytics portlet now supports workbook pivot tables. So if you're using the new Suite Analytics workbooks and you create a pivot table, you can use that pivot table in a portlet on your dashboard, which is really cool because then now it's actually making those pivot tables useful to people outside of that person that's working on that workbook. And so they're going to start, I foresee, expanding the usefulness of the Suite Analytics as we go. And like I mentioned in January, we're going to have a deep dive into the Suite Analytics and what it does and how you can use it to leverage the information that's in your NetSuite account. So this is, I think, a really cool addition. If you've started using Suite Analytics, check that out. Also, they've increased the number of analytics portlets that you can use. So you can now put 10 different analytics portlets on your dashboard. Sometimes on very extensive dashboards, you run into limits of you can only put like 6 saved search portlets or 8 report snapshots or whatever. And I've seen people that need more than that. So I like to see it when they add more functionality and the ability to add more portlets. I don't know why they have a limit. I mean, I guess they have to have a limit, but I feel like it could be more than 10, but we'll see. They've also increased the number of KPI headlines. So the headline are these boxes that you see at the top, and there used to be just 4 that you could put in, and now you can have 8 different KPI headlines that are pulling information from your KPIs. No, these are just built, they're just there. So once you do the upgrade, you can just add up to 8 now. So you shouldn't have to, as far as I know, at least the release notes didn't say you have to add any functionality to this. Haven't been able to do it? Okay. Maybe we'll take a look later. One of the other cool things that I think is very functional in a dashboard is the full screen view option now. So if you are looking at like a saved search, for example, a search portlet, a custom search, there's this little expand icon in the upper right-hand corner when you hover over that. And when you click on that expand icon, it'll pop open a window so that, you're still on the dashboard, but it just expands that search so that you get to see more detail in that search without having to actually leave the dashboard and go into that search. And then you can also see there's a slider bar on the right-hand side. So it's basically pulling in what you would see in a safe search screen, you can see in this expanded view. So a little bit extra functionality there. So one of the, what I think is one of the biggest updates that they've had in some time for this bank file import is the advanced banking data import. And so there's kind of 3 different sections or functions to this. There's the advanced banking data import, there's the bank statement parsers suite app, and then the bank connectivity suite app. So basically, the advanced banking data import, you can import in more file formats from more financial institutions. In the last, before 2019.2, there were very strict, very strict limitations of the different file formats. Like you can import a BAI2 file format, but you couldn't import a BAI file format. And so the BAI file format is an older format that's not used anymore, but I know that there are, for example, some Canadian banks that use that file format, and that's pretty much all they offer. And so this gives you the ability to expand the different types of file formats that you can import from your banks. You can automate the file upload process through a secure FTP connection. You can create format profiles from your financial institutions, which contain custom file formats along with mappings and configurations. To improve the import process, it also includes the following enhancements: new import method, direct bank connectivity, so that's the SFTP, asynchronous importing, more informative import status and results, new financial institution records, and the ability to exclude bank transaction codes. So part of that has to do with the parser suite app and the connectivity suite app. So here's just a quick screenshot of the new banking data import piece. And so this is kind of the default now. I don't believe there's any upgrade or change necessary to your account. So if your account is upgraded to 19.2, this is what your banking data import screen is going to look like. So here's where you control the connectivity to your bank. And then you can also import with a default parser. I'll talk about parser in a minute. So there's basically just a lot more functionality here for this banking import. And so the bank statement parsers suite app, what this does is it delivers a standard parser plugin that can read bank statement files and import the data to aid with bank reconciliation in NetSuite. So the suite app also comes with sample scripts that you can download and use as a reference when you create your custom parsers. So parsing, basically it analyzes the structure of a bank file, and then you can create a mapping of the fields in that file to how NetSuite will recognize those. So the reason that there was a strict limitation in the different file formats before was that NetSuite had to say, okay, we get this field from a BAI2 and we know exactly where it's going to go. But now you can have all these different file formats and you can define where the fields from your import file go into the NetSuite, into your banking system. So the parsers that are included are for BAI2, OFX and QFX, which is QuickBooks file formats, and then MT940, which is the Swift bank transaction file formats. But you can create a custom parser basically for any file format. So there's pretty much not any limitation on the bank files, the file types that you can import into NetSuite now with this suite app. The bank connectivity suite app works together with the bank statement parsers plugin, so you kind of should use both of them. It securely connects to your bank or third-party financial institution. The suite app connects to financial institutions using an SFTP, which is a secure FTP connection, and then import the bank statement files that match a specified file name pattern to NetSuite. So basically, this is automating the file import option instead of having to get the file, maybe log into your bank, download your statement in a BAI2 format and then manually import that into NetSuite. This connectivity system is going to help automate that. And so there's a lot of extra flexibility for importing those file formats now. The next one I'm going to talk about is SuiteApprovals version 2019.2. So earlier today, Chris talked about advanced approvals. So that is different from SuiteApprovals. So there's different options that NetSuite is providing to give you approval functionality. So currently, SuiteApprovals works on journal entries, engineering change orders, expense reports, purchase orders, sales orders, and vendor bills. So it creates an approval process for that. The new thing that they're doing now is they've added requisitions to the approval process as well. So if you're not familiar with SuiteApprovals, basically what NetSuite did is they created this really complicated workflow. And when you install SuiteApprovals, this is the workflow that gets installed into your account. And each one of these sections has a whole bunch of different rules and routing, and this is completely locked down. There's nothing that you can go into this workflow and change, and you don't have to understand how this works, fortunately, because it's really complicated. So the way that you access the SuiteApprovals is through this approval rule page. So basically you create these approval rules, and then that workflow that we just saw in the background is running based on the criteria and inputs that you put in the SuiteApprovals. For example, one of the limitations that you couldn't really do before this is you couldn't create a group of people. So let's say you have 3 different project managers, and then you have somebody who works on those different projects. If that person has an expense report, typically the only person that is set up to approve that expense report is their supervisor or their expense report approver. What this allows you to do is you can create a group of approvers, and so you can say any of these 3 project managers can approve the expense report from this one person. And that's the type of functionality that you couldn't really do before without this type of system. There definitely are some limitations to the SuiteApprovals. It's relatively new, so this is just a new iteration of the SuiteApprovals. Oh, and by the way, that number in the top right-hand corner, that is the bundle ID, so that if you want to quickly go look at that bundle and look at all the different components that it installs into your system, you can just search for that bundle ID where Chris showed us earlier, and it'll bring up all of the information about that. So the new part of the SuiteApprovals is allowing us to apply this to the requisition records. So you can now create approval rules for requisition records. I won't go through all of that in detail, but that's one of the additions. One of the other additions to the SuiteApprovals is that there's now support for cross-subsidiary approvals for users with appropriate subsidiary permissions. So typically those approval rules from this system, you couldn't have one person from one subsidiary being, doing approvals for somebody in a different subsidiary. So this is functionality that's been built into the SuiteApprovals bundle now. Subsidiaries are part of one role accounts. Basically, they're different business units if you're not familiar with that. So that's what, those are the updates to the SuiteApproval version 2019.2. So the next one is the return authorization from a case. So I'll read this real quick. The return authorization from Case Suite app lets you create a return authorization or a sales order directly from a support case for existing sales orders or customer invoices. You can search for transactions using the transaction type, document number, transaction date, or through a date range. On the transaction record, you can then select the items and specify the quantity for return or replacement. Through the Suite app, you can ensure that the source transaction, the support case, and the generated return authorization or sales order are all linked together. So basically, if somebody contacts you, your support rep can create a case and then create this return authorization automatically from a case, and then everything is linked together with this. One thing to note about this is there is a Suite solution that's out there, or was out there, called return authorization from a case. And this is one of the things that Chris was talking about, where you had to go to NetSuite and say, hey, can we get this installed into our account? We want to install this. And then NetSuite has to provision it to your account, and then you can install it. But what they did is they released this to be a public bundle now. So all you have to do is search for that bundle number, and you can install this into your account. But be warned that the previous Suite solution, there's white papers out there about it that tell you how it works, but it's not the same functionality as their new publicly available bundle. So just be aware if you're researching this, there's a little bit of differences there. But I thought this was a pretty cool feature to be able to automatically create a return authorization from a case. Going into the Suite Analytics, so there's some new standard Suite Analytics workbooks. The transaction detail workbook and the inventory Suite Analytics workbook are both new to the Suite Analytics workbook section. Some of the other ones, and it wasn't clear to me if these ones were new or if they were already there because I didn't really notice before, but there's a sales ordered workbook, a sales invoiced workbook, Suite Commerce top searches, which you have to have the Suite Commerce system to use that, and then a system notes version 2. And so NetSuite is being kind of careful about these, and they are in beta. So if it doesn't totally work the way that you would expect it to, then realize these are in beta, and so some of the data it may not be there, some of the record joints may not be fully baked out yet. So they're still working on building all of this out. But I think the transaction details workbook is probably one of the biggest changes that I'm excited about. Basically, I don't know about you guys, but when I create a saved search, like 9 times out of 10, it's based on a transaction saved search, right? You're looking for sales orders, or you're looking for return authorizations, or you're looking for invoices, or whatever it is. Like the vast majority of those come from transactions. And so the transaction details workbook gives us the ability to start building very, very complex workbooks based on the transaction details. And so I did a quick screenshot here. This is just the top half of the page for the transaction details workbook. But if you go down this list from that data set there, it is unbelievable how many different areas and different fields and joins that you can do that for things that are joined to transactions, and then start pulling it all together to create some really complex workbooks and then pivot tables from there. So hopefully Jeremy's going to be showing this in detail in January, because I think it's super useful. Okay, so effective date pricing. And I noticed that Chris earlier said that the effective date pricing was a Suite solution that had to be provisioned, but I believe that they've now released it as a public bundle. And so basically what this does is it allows you to define price changes based on a specific date. So think about like from a retailer perspective, a lot of manufacturers have specific sale periods, and they say, from Cyber Monday to the end of the week, you can offer a 15% discount on all of your products. So normally what you'd have to do is you'd have to find your list of products, and you go in and you make that change, and then if you want your sale to start right at midnight, then you got to have somebody up at midnight ready to do that CSV import to make those changes to your file format or to your prices in NetSuite. So the effective date pricing allows you to basically schedule those price changes. You can say when a price is going to change. You can say when it needs to revert back to original price. And it could also be just applied to like annual price changes. So if on December 1st, you're going to have a price changes for everything in your system, then you can schedule those in advance so that, again, you don't have to remember on that day. You have to go in and make sure you do all of those changes. So one of the interesting things I saw about the effective date pricing, which kind of made me scratch my head, was it doesn't work unless the following features are enabled: multiple currencies, quantity pricing level, and multiple prices. Now the last two I can understand, but the multiple currencies, I'm not quite sure why that's required. I don't know enough about it yet to understand why. But just kind of an FYI, that has to be enabled in your account for this bundle to be effective, or for it to be able to work. So that is effective date pricing, available as a public bundle now. Yes. Is it just sales prices or also purchase prices? That's a good question. I think it would apply to purchase prices too. I'm not sure though. Has anybody used this? Does anybody know? No? That's a good question. We can try and find out. Yeah, that would be cool, right? Yeah, apply to purchase prices too, for sure. Okay, next one is vendor prepayments. So prior to NetSuite 19.2, vendor deposits were tracked manually. Now you can manage vendor deposits using vendor prepayments. Vendor prepayment records track deposit amounts paid to vendors before they accept a purchase order. Oh, my battery died. That's all right. I got it. Just like that. Okay. Maybe I was talking too fast anyway. All right. So where was I? So basically, you can schedule these payments before a vendor accepts a PO for a good or service. Then you can apply these prepayment amounts against open bills for this vendor. The feature enables you to record and track multiple prepayments and prepayment applications for all vendors. So this is not a bundle or anything. It's just a feature that you need to enable. So to do that, you would go to Setup, Company, Setup Tasks, Enable Features, and then under the Accounting subtab is where this will be enabled. And one of the cool things that you can do here is that you could say, you could have a prepayment, like maybe you had to do, there's a contract that's going to be billed in different pieces, and you had to put down a certain amount on the order for them to build the product for you. So then they're going to bill you maybe in multiple pieces, but you can choose how much of that prepayment goes to different bills. It can be applied to more than just one bill down the road. So it sounds like a pretty cool feature. Has anybody here used this yet? I feel like Margie has, but you guys have used it. How is it? Is it working okay, or is it?
Yeah, we had a couple of issues in the beginning, but it worked.
It's working good? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, good to know. Okay, the next one, this is pretty specialized, but it sounded pretty cool, and I'm not sure if we realized from at the beginning. Really, this kind of applies mostly to the food and beverage SuiteApps, or this is in the food and beverage SuiteApps category. But order guides. So order guides are predefined lists of items that customers can order from on a regular basis. So order guides enable you to add any or all of the predefined items in bulk to a sales order. And the example they give is you can create an order guide for a group of customers such as pizza restaurants. So you add the list of items like flour and cheese, which they may order on a regular basis. And then for each customer, you can also further customize the list by adding more items based on recent orders. So basically, if people are reordering the same thing over and over and over again, you can create these order guides that help kind of streamline that process of ordering multiple items or multiple things at the same time. And again, this is a bundle, 275,880. That's where you would install that one. This one is called New Sent Email List Detailed Information. And so one of the coolest things about this is that basically before this, there was very, very limited information on when you would send like a transactional email out of NetSuite. You typically have to use the automated marketing system to be able to get any information on an email that was sent. So the new sent email list gives you detailed information on all of the emails that are sent out of the NetSuite system. It's not going to give you all the same information like open rate and click through and things like that, like the marketing, but it'll tell you like if it bounced or not, and if so, that means if the customer has received that message or not. So in previous releases, administrators could only view undelivered email through the undelivered email list and search capabilities, but now this sent email list gives you a lot more information about all of the different emails in the system. So no changes are needed. This is automatically added to all of the accounts in NetSuite at this point. I'm just going to give you, I know this is super tiny, you can't see it very well, but this is the detail page from a sent email. So you would go to, in the global search bar, you search for page : sent email list, and then it'll bring up the sent email list, and then it'll start listing out all of the different emails that have been sent, and then you can drill into each of these and get detail on what was sent. And so at the very bottom, you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but there's a recipient, and then there's a status of delivered. So now we can see for these transactional emails that what happened with those that are not just the automated marketing emails. So again, that's just automatic in the system now. The next one is password changes, logged in system notes. So requests to change password are now logged in system notes on an entity record. Changes are logged no matter who or what initiates the request. System notes can capture successful changes requested through the UI, web services, or RESTlets. Admins can view the password change information in the system notes for the following entity records: employee, customer, partner, and vendor. So before there was basically no insight into this. And so now these password request changes are being tracked in the system notes on those records. Locked timesheet period. So this was kind of weird for me. I had a client asking about this functionality, and I was like, no, there's not really any way to do this. And then I read the release notes, and I said, oh, actually, this is coming. And so it's pretty cool because basically, if you're using NetSuite to track your time for all of your employees, you can lock a timesheet period so that after a certain date, they cannot change or enter time past, prior to that. So let's say your time periods lock once every other week, so like on a 2-week cycle. So you can lock those timesheet periods so that you can say, okay, you guys have to have all your time entered by the end of the week. If it's not entered, you can't modify it after that. And so you can lock those timesheet periods. Maybe those are tied to a payroll system and you don't want anything to change after it's been sent to payroll. So this is a new capability to lock those timesheet periods for that. Here's how you would enable that feature. You go to Setup, Accounting, Accounting Preferences, and then Time and Expenses. And then right down here at the bottom, highlighted in yellow, is the Lock Timesheet Period. And that pull-down menu allows you to say weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. I don't know if there's any other options there. And then you can choose a grace period. So you can say after the week, you have 2 days to keep, to update those entries, and then the timesheets are locked after that. So again, that's just no installation required. You just have to turn on the feature by going to the accounting preferences. Offline time and expense logging. So this is I think a cool new feature. This applies to the iPhone app, the iPhone NetSuite app, and it allows you to log expenses and time if you're not connected to the internet. So the use case here is if you are traveling for business and you need to enter time. You're on the airplane and you have all your receipts and you have time to go through and enter everything. You can basically create an expense and time log, and it stores that on the local device, like your phone. And then once you have internet connection, you have the ability to take that expense log and convert it into expense reports. And so that's kind of a cool feature that you can do without having to be logged on. And here's basically just screenshots of how you would do that. So this first view on the left, this is the iPhone app. In that bottom left-hand corner, you can see the expenses button, and we're not logged in at this point. And so then you click on the expenses, and then you go to the next part here. You can take a picture, upload a picture of your receipt. You can put in all the details there. And then after I did one of these expenses into the log, you can see the log where it's meals and expenses for $100. So that's all not logged in to your NetSuite account. You can do it if you have no internet activity at that time. So I thought that was a pretty cool update for the mobile phones. I don't think that's for the Android phone yet. This was, I believe, just for the iPhone version. But the Android one will be coming, I'm sure. Okay, CPE, keyword number 2 is suitcase. So mark that down on your keyword trackers, all of you CPAs. All right. All right, whew, that was a whirlwind tour of all of the updates. It's exactly 11 o'clock, so that's all I have for now. So we're gonna kind of switch out real quick. I think right now we can do the drawings for the giveaways from our 2 sponsors. And then right after that, we'll get into the tip and trick from Margie. Okay, last minute card entries. You guys want to come up front to do the drawing? Did you put your card in? Okay. Come on up. And you can pick somebody to do the drawing for you. So, Bhoomi, what are you giving away?
We're giving away a $100 Amazon gift card.
$100 Amazon gift card.
Mail out to the person who wins, and all that Cory pick.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just put my card in there, so I can't.
My card's in there, by the way.
Yours is?
Yeah. So it doesn't count if you pull it.
Okay. This is Michael Candelaria from Renew. Michael, are you here? There he is. Big winner. Okay. So Michael, you can see Chris when you're done, and she'll get your details. Well, she has your details. Right here.
Okay. You want to send it here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, great way to think alike.
Next one.
We have this a very similar prize.
A $100 Amazon gift card. Everybody loves him.
Casey, we do the honors.
Okay.
I'm going to draw, and I'm going to hand it to Cory.
Okay, this is from Stages Cycling, Kevin Moller. Sorry, Kevin, you're right there. All right. There you go. Thanks a lot. Okay. All right. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move into our tips and tricks from Margie. I'm gonna.
I changed the battery.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did.
All right. Let me.
Turn this off till I'm plugged in. Okay, so you have to make me present.
Mm-hmm. Margie.
Okay, can everybody hear me through the microphone? Okay, in the back? Okay, cool.
All right, you should be good to go there.
All right. Cory, if I close this, if I X out this screen, will I lose connection?
Choose one and then hit share.
Okay. Well, there's only one, so.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so today we're going to talk about a really cool tip and trick that actually Mike Cacklin was going to present, and he put together most of this presentation. I just added a few things after he called me at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon and said he wouldn't be able to come in because of this go live date at his company. So thank you to Mike for putting most of this together, and it just so happens I have been playing around with this a little bit. How many people here have a sandbox? Wow, quite a few. Okay, how many people here don't have a sandbox? Okay, for those of you that don't have a sandbox, this is still relevant because when you kind of get a sandbox twice a year, when you actually, before you move to production, when you get an upgrade, for like a month, 2 months, you're given a pre-release, and that is basically a sandbox. So you could still take advantage of this. So basically, what is this feature? It's called Copy to Account. And some of you might have noticed this in your pre-release or even in your 2019.2 upgrade. I'm not exactly sure when this feature came out. I do know that when I went on to SuiteAnswers, I could see that there was information and there's actually a little video and everything from March. So I'm not quite sure if it was 2019.1 or 2, but it is there and it's not highly publicized. So what it is, it allows you to copy objects and their dependencies between accounts, like between production and a sandbox, between a release preview and a production, and it'll copy and create even some of those dependencies. So Chris earlier was talking about and showed you a demonstration of the Suite Bundler, that before in the past, you would have to create a bundle and then move the bundle over from a sandbox to production, and that was how you move things. Or You could go and recreate everything from scratch. So this is a really cool feature that they've now built in. It is beta, and it's not fully baked, but it's pretty much baked right now. So just, you know, how NetSuite does things. It comes out, it wants to give you an opportunity to try something, so it says it's beta until it completes it. So what can you copy? You can copy saved searches, workflows, custom record, custom lists, user roles, templates, custom fields, saved mass updates, CSV imports. So you can see the power of that because you test out a CSV import in your sandbox and you go, okay, I'm ready to move it over. You do a very complex workflow and you want to move it over. Now it's just a click of a button and you go through a 4-step wizard and it'll move it over for you. So the couple things I noticed that weren't working, and if anybody, who here has used this feature? Okay. Has anyone seen how can you actually do it with custom forms? I cannot see the copy to beta, the copy to account in that. I think it's missing. It says it clearly says anything that's in the certain framework. It says it should be there, but it's not. So I think that's sort of the part that's not fully baked. And I can't see any way to move over reports or anything with Suite Analytics yet. So I'm sure those things are probably, I hope those things are probably coming. So why would you want to use it? One, to avoid mistakes from trying to recreate something you already created. And it's much faster than recreating something from scratch. So what I'd actually like to do is, before I go into the next slides, is I'd actually like to just show you how it works because it is really powerful. So if I go into, oops, escape. So here I have 2 accounts open at the same time. I've got my production account. We don't have a sandbox. So but what I can actually do is move from the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group, because I have access to that. You have to be administrator. So you have to be administrator in both accounts. And the first thing you would do, enabling this feature is so easy. You just go to set up enable features, and then you pick the Suite Cloud tab over on the far right, up at the top. And all you really have to do is check this copy to account beta. And once you check that, if you do not have the Suite Cloud Development Framework or the SDF already checked, it'll automatically check it for you and it'll go through terms and conditions that you have to agree to. So then if I wanted to copy something over, let's just take a saved search, since obviously I don't want to copy anything really over from this system. And I would say to copy over, let's see, a test. Oh, wait. I'm going to copy over search, test, test 3. And then notice, well, it doesn't show. Okay, well, what's going on here? If I edit it, you have to be in the edit mode. Same thing with, when we bring up workflow, it says copy to, and of course it's beta, so it says copy to beta, but copy to account. And then you say, what system are you copying to? I'm copying to my production account, and it does actually do an audit trail. So once this is done, you can see the list of who did it, who brought it over, when it was done, and any information you need, including the logs. So you can always review that. So I'm just going to say test 3. Say next. It's going to show any dependencies. And for this one, you can see that it's got a custom field. It has a custom list, things like that. And the one thing is, it's saying like custom subtab. Right now, I guess because it's beta, there's no way to actually say, well, I don't really care about that subtab. But it's there right now. So you really do, since it is beta, you need to look and see if it's bringing over what you want it to bring over. So the next step, so that's step 2, showing the dependencies. Step 3 it shows you a preview of what it's going to copy over and also tells you whether or not it can actually be copied over if there's going to be errors. So you can see that it's saying this is all success. It's saying in the deployment preview, it's actually going to create the object, this custom list. It's going to create this custom tab. It's going to create various aspects, the save search, etc., this custom field. Also, one of the other things, if I was bringing over a workflow or something else, it might have custom records. And then you would actually have over on the dependencies, back on the dependency screen, you would actually have checklists over here. So you see under include instances. So it could create the entire record layout, not the data, but you could bring over custom records and it would actually create them for you if it was a dependency. And you would check those whether you wanted them created or not. So from the preview, I would just check deployment at the bottom of the screen, which I'm not going to do because this is actually production, and it would bring it over and it would give you a confirmation that it actually brought it over. So I have used this and I think you can see the power in this. So going back to my screenshot, a lot of these are just screenshots. This is just basically saying what the 4 steps, what the wizard does in each of those steps, enabling the features, and what it said, anything that is you can do with an SDF in the Suite Cloud Development Framework should be supported. So that's when I went over to look there at the Suite Cloud Development Framework and said, what do you support? And that's where I found forms and Suite Analytics, but it's not there, so I figure it's probably coming. Then as long as you can see this copy to account, so wherever you go, whatever you want to copy over, if you see that at the top, copy to account, then you know you can actually try that. This is an example of copying a workflow. You just pick the account you want it to go to. And if you have 10 different accounts, it'll have it grayed out if you can't copy to an account. It'll only bold on if you can actually copy to that specific account. So this shows what you're deploying. Then you have basically this preview, which is are you sure screen. And then it'll say whether or not the deployment worked. And then this is just a screenshot of a deployment audit trail. Remember in the beginning, I actually put in like test 3 over on the right. This shows you whether it was successful, when it was done, and then over on this far right, you can actually download the log. It doesn't say how you like what format. Just know in any type of an editor, in a Word, Word or IE, etc. It'll all work, and I'll just give you the details so you have that. And there is documentation, really good documentation. You have to be careful because you want to make sure that you enter in, I found that copy to account beta is what you want to look for, because otherwise it'll give you some of the older methods like the bundling and things like that. And then if you just want to go to the Suite answers, it's 82334. There's a really cool little video, I think it's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that goes through what you do, sort of the process. Things to remember, only available for administrators, but I think that's kind of a given, like why would you want to let anyone else do it? It is beta. You have to enable this feature in both your source and targets. So if you know that you're always going to go from your sandbox to your production, then I found that you don't actually have to enable that in your sandbox. But you might as well just do it in both. Basically, if you enable in both, it allows you to go both ways. There's no way to cancel or undo the changes, so that's really key. And you cannot copy customizations that are locked, hidden, or part of an installed Suite app. So just some key things to remember. And I think that's it. Are there any, whoa. Okay, are there any questions on that? Anything that you wanted to explore? Is it something that you think you all might be able to use if you haven't already used it? Okay, some nods. All right, great. Well, that's all that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have to give ownership back or not?
No, let's take it.
Okay.
Okay, so that ends the broadcast portion. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the GoToMeeting. Thank you all for attending remotely.